Good morning, everyone. Will the Standing Committee on Crown Corporations please come to order? Before the committee can proceed with the business before it, it must elect a chairperson. Are there any nominations? Minister Wiebe.
Thank you very much. I'd like to nominate Mr. Brar.
Mr. Brar has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, Mr. Brar, please take the chair.
Good morning, friends. Just want to make the committee aware that we are making this substitution. MLA Morose would be substitute for MLA Malloy. Our next item of business is the election of a vice chairperson. Are there any nominations? Minister Wiebe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to nominate Mr. Morose.
MLA Morose has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, MLA Morose is elected vice chairperson. This meeting has been called to consider the annual report of the Manitoba Public Insurance Corporation for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that questions and comments must be put through the chair. Are there any suggestions from the committee as to how long we should sit this morning? Mr. Panook?
Thank you, Chair. Maximum, but we'll see how all the questions go, and we'll do accordingly to that time. But we'll definitely use 3 hours.
It has been suggested that the committee would sit for 3 hours, and then we'll see, depending upon the questions, if we want to sit longer. Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed, and so ordered. Does the Honourable Minister wish to make an opening statement, and would they please introduce the officials in attendance?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Wiebe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will make just a brief opening statement. Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Wiebe. I'm the Minister of Justice and the Minister responsible for Manitoba Public Insurance. This represents my first standing committee as Minister responsible for MPI, and I do look forward to the opportunity to be here with you today to learn from our officials and to hear the important questions of the opposition. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the committee here today takes place on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Oji-Cree, the Dakota, the Dene, and the Métis people. but also that MPI operates throughout Manitoba. MPI's primary office is located on Treaty 1 territory and the homeland of the Métis Nation, but their work extends throughout Treaties 2, 3, 4, and 5, and all here today acknowledge that Winnipeg's water is sourced from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation. It is a new day at MPI. In our short time in office, our government settled the strike, gave workers a fair deal, appointed a new board with a wealth of experience at MPI. We have a new CEO who is committed to stabilizing the corporation with a renewed focus on serving the people of Manitoba. MPI belongs to all Manitobans, and we're putting it back on track to deliver those affordable rates and quality services now and for years to come. With that short opening statement, I'd like to introduce those in attendance who will be answering questions and supporting the work of the committee here today, including senior officials from the corporation. With us today is Carmen Nedwin, the MPI's chair of the board of directors, as well as Satvir Jatana, MPI's new president and chief executive officer. Carmen brings a wealth of experience to the board, being the Winnipeg chapter president of the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, a lay bencher for the Law Society of Manitoba, the former chairperson of the Manitoba Liquor Control Commission, and furthermore, a former Manitoba Hydro board member. We thank Carmen for her service, in addition to all other board members who we are thrilled to have appointed. There's much work to do, but we have full faith and confidence in the work that the people that we have appointed will do. Satvir Jatana was appointed as the new president and chief executive officer of the corporation effective January 29th, 2024. Satvir has been with MPI since 2015, serving in various executive level positions, including executive director of operations, interim CEO for a short time, and vice president and chief customer officer. Under Satvir's leadership, MPI will focus on getting a new direction for MPI, informed by guidance and advice from the board of directors, key stakeholders, and our government. We as government and myself as minister look forward to MPI's new strategic approach, which will focus on financial responsibility, customer service, and strengthening relationships with employees and stakeholders. And with those short opening comments, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Minister Wiebe. Does the critic for official opposition have an opening statement?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and you recognize
Mr. Panook.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I do have a statement, and I just want to again congratulate Satvir Janta for her position, getting the appointment for the president and CEO of MPI. I know we've had given awards to the motorcycle when it was a declaration for the motorcycle week a couple of years in a row there, and I just want to congratulate. I'm looking forward to asking questions when it comes to the MPI. I actually have a background in MPI. I was an insurance broker for about 20 years before I became an MLA here at the legislature first for the constituency of Arthur Verdon and then for Turtle Mountain. And so I do have a couple of my colleagues here who will also ask questions as we go along. We have MLA Pershat and MLA Byram, who will be also asking questions during these next 3 hours. And we may not go all the 3 hours, but we just want to make sure that in case there is more questions that my colleagues have, we can continue as far as we can go. And looking forward to getting more information about MPI, learning more at the interior, like I do when it comes to the brokerage side, but also learning more about the company itself. I'm looking forward to the questions to be asked and looking forward to all the answers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Panook. Do the representatives from Manitoba Public Insurance Corporation wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
You need to recognize.
Good morning, everyone. and thank
Sorry,
you. I'm sorry.
sorry, Ms. Nedohin.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here with you today. It's an honor and a pleasure to represent the board of MPI as well as our employees across the province. It was just over 4 months ago that I became chair of MPI, working alongside an amazing group of individuals that make up our board. We have a well-seasoned board that includes business leaders, 3 former employees, including a former CEO, 2 actuaries, and a trade unionist. The 6 women and 3 men who make up our board bring to the table exactly the expertise that we need. When we were appointed by Minister Wiebe last October, job 1 was to settle the strike, which was accomplished in very short order. Job 2 was to constitute our board committees. The committees were struck based on their particular areas of expertise along with the needs of the corporation. Our chair of technology is Christian Dandeneau, who is the owner of ID Fusion Software. Our chair of HR and governance is Fran Fredrickson, who recently retired from MPI after 23 years and who has much experience with Crown corporations as she was vice chair of Manitoba Liquor Commission and later Manitoba Liquor Lotteries. Our investment committee chair is Candy Wong, an employee of the Superannuation Board of Manitoba. And our risk and audit committee's chair is Luke Johnston, MPI's former chief actuary, whose insight is invaluable. Each and every member of the board sits on at least 2 committees, and all of the committees are very active. Much has been accomplished in our short term on the board, including, as mentioned above, quickly settling the strike. We hired our new CEO, Satvir Jatana, receiving and prioritizing the findings with the E&Y report. We received and approved Q1, Q2, and Q3 financial results. We worked with executive on preparing and finalizing 2024-2025 annual budget. We started our strategic planning, including constituting a separate committee of board, management, and staff. MPI is a complex organization. Our staff and management have had a couple of bumpy years with 3 CEOs in 6 years and 3 board chairs in 7 months. This board and this executive are fully committed to returning MPI to a stable organization that is focused on delivering affordable rates and providing value for Manitobans. I'm pleased to be here today with with Satvir, who will provide you with additional insight into the commitment we have made to guide MPI into a new chapter.
Thank you. Ms. Jatana?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, my name is Satvir Jatana, and my last name is just as unique as my first one, so I get it that it's not always easy to pronounce, but thank you for having me here today. As the board chair alluded, I'm the new president and CEO of Manitoba Public Insurance, and I welcome this opportunity to be here with you today. As this is my first appearance in front of this committee, I would like to take a few minutes to introduce myself and give you a little bit of my background and how I will ensure that we continue to deliver value to Manitobans for years to come. I am honored to step into this new role, and I am grateful to MPI's Board of Directors for the opportunity to serve the province I call home. As a member of the corporation for almost 9 years, I have seen firsthand the impact MPI has on our customers and the pride that our team have in what they do. Over the years, I have worked alongside talented people in many areas of the corporation. In 2017, I joined MPI's executive leadership team and most recently served as the Vice President and Chief Customer Officer. In this position, I had the opportunity to oversee product development, communication, government relations, and the design and development of customer experience, which included the corporation's effort to expand the gathering and utilization of customer feedback across the organization. Over the years, as a senior leader, I have had the privilege of leading various teams in the corporation, including operations, human resources, facility management, and corporate services, as well as serving as the interim president and CEO. Through this work, I have developed a strong understanding of the role of a Crown corporation and the expectation that Manitobans have for their public insurer. I know that there has been time, more in the recent past, that we have fallen short of those expectations. But I am here committed to changing that. And that begins with my commitment to my organization and to Manitobans by putting a new corporate strategy and structure in place that will help MPI rebuild trust with our employees, stakeholders, including our regulator, the Public Utilities Board, and of course, our customers. Our corporation's success depends on MPI staying aligned with our valued partners. We will begin by introducing one-year stability strategy that will focus MPI on meeting customers' need, restoring employee trust and engagement, strengthening enterprise technology, delivering stable and affordable rates, and promoting data-driven decision. While we have finalized our near-term strategy, we have also begun the work of developing our multi-year strategy that will guide MPI over a longer horizon. As we plan that strategy, I have already begun the work of reaching out to our partners and stakeholders to seek their feedback, guidance, and advice. Through this collaborative approach, MPI will create a plan that will prioritize our long-standing tradition of providing exceptional service experience and delivering affordable rates for Manitoban. I deeply believe in these principles and understand that we must continue to evolve to meet the needs of our customers moving forward. We recognize that we have struggled to meet those needs while experiencing the first strike in MPI's 52-year history last year. It is difficult to put into words the impact the strike had on our team, organization, and customers. And as leaders, we are committed to ensuring we restore the trust and engagement of these valued groups. We are incredibly grateful to our team now that they are back at work, and we are so pleased with the progress they are making to restore full services across the province. Our team is hard at work, committed to reducing these service backlogs after the strike. These backlogs were further impacted as 2023 was one of the worst years for hail claim in the history of MPI. Since the end of the strike in November, we have prioritized rescheduling customers who had canceled appointments, including road test, estimating, and adjusting for claims. Customers with canceled Class 1 and 5 road tests were offered new appointments, and majority have completed at least one test when we resumed testing services. In fact, 84% of customers who had their Class 5 road test canceled have taken at least one test since the strike ended. And there is also availability across the province for new road test availability. We are making significant progress in setting total loss claims and completing outstanding adjusting appointments by creating new processes and offering overtime to ensure we can get caught up by spring. While these updates have been important for me to share today, I know that we are here today to review the 22-23 annual report. As reflected in this report, the corporation's focus remains centered on fiscal prudence. I truly believe that controlling our cost is one of the main factors in driving affordable rates for Manitobans. Overall, I'm pleased to share that MPI ended the year in a positive financial position with a net income of $4.2 million. We are particularly proud of this result as the past year has included a number of challenges, including significant inflationary pressures that impacted both our claims cost and corporate expenses. MPI's capital management plan also continued to protect Manitobans by ensuring MPI is properly capitalized or above legislative target for three core lines of business. At the end of last fiscal, all three insurance lines, basic, extension, and SRE, special risk extension, met or exceeded these targets. While each of these lines is unique, they all play a vital role in providing comprehensive coverage for customers across the province. We have responsibility to regularly review and update our products to meet the needs of these.
Order. The speaking time has expired. Is the committee willing to allow to complete the statement?
Mr. Chair, I'll give you to continue with the
Okay.
report.
Thank you, Ms. Chatana.
Thank you. As I was saying, we have a responsibility to regularly review and update our products to meet customer needs and keep these lines sustainable. This includes our special risk extension line. We have recently adjusted our rates and third-party liability limit to ensure that commercial line remains competitive while providing customers with appropriate coverage. We worked closely with our industry partner, including Insurance Broker Association of Manitoba and the Manitoba Trucking Association, to ensure alignment and understanding of these changes for this important industry in our province. Our fourth line of business is DVA, which manages vehicle licensing and registration. MPI has administered DVA since 2004. And since the beginning of this agreement, this line of business has operated in deficit. Recognizing this is a challenge for the corporation, we are pleased that government will be providing additional $10 million to MPI this upcoming fiscal year. And that is over and above the agreed upon amount to cover the cost we bear to provide these services to Manitobans. We are working with government to find a sustainable and a long-term solution for these essential services. These financial results and effort to improve our product all align with our core commitment to providing stable rates that are among the lowest in Canada. Manitobans will also see coming in upcoming fiscal April 1st, 2024, with a 5% rate decrease in basic insurance rate. This rate reduction will mark the 5th consecutive year of rate decrease for Manitobans. We will also be expanding the driver safety rating scale, which means Manitoba's safest driver will receive a higher vehicle premium discount starting next month. Customers who move to the new level of 18 on the scale will now receive 46% discount. MPI will also apply a greater discount to the majority of the DSR levels, offering larger saving to customers. Together, MPI's effort to keep rates affordable remain a key focus of our organization. Now, I'll just briefly also touch on Project Nova. We launched Nova in 2019 for the purpose of replacing MPI's core technology system that are near end of life. These systems represent foundation of Manitoba's public MPI's model, and longer we wait, the more costly it becomes to maintain the outdated technology. Replacing the older system will help MPI mitigate risk, improve information security, and allow more flexibility in meeting customers' need. Nova is the largest and most complex business transformation in MPI's history. Unfortunately, there have been significant challenges thus far in our journey. We recognize that our original timeline for project was too aggressive, and in 2022, we were forced to rebaseline our project to allow team to address risk that would get in the way of us achieving our results. We launched first release of the project early last year, addressing changes to our SRE line of business. And through this, we have learned a lot, including the importance of investing time into readiness effort to prevent issues after a launch. I will be upfront that our lack of readiness resulted in a number of defects following our first release, which has impacted our timeline and put pressure on available resources. We have further faced challenges in staying on track with NOVA delivery timelines due to changes in leadership at the senior leadership level last year and the ongoing impact of the strike. All this has caused us to rethink and replan rest of NOVA delivery to ensure we deliver value while staying within the budget. We will have more to share later this spring about NOVA along with our broader strategy work. I want to again thank you today for giving me this opportunity to share these updates about our team and our organization. MPI is dedicated to being accountable and transparent as we begin a new chapter in providing value to Manitobans and contributing to a safer roads through public insurance. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chetana, and congratulations on your new position. And thank you, Ms. Nadohin. And the floor is now open for questions.
Thanks.
Mr. Panook.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I got a question. I guess I'm going to focus on my questions. We're going to be focused on the when it comes to the actual insurance. When it comes to the reserve funds, I'm going to start with the question to Mr. Chair to the CEO. On the annual report on page 17, it stated that the fair market value corporation's investment portfolio was at the end of the last fiscal year was $3.6 billion. This sounds like a corporation is in good standings when it comes to the reserve funds. And can the official provide us with the update on the investment portfolio today?
Ms. Chetana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the end of Q2, so absolutely our reserves are in a very good financial position. Quarter 3, which we just posted this morning, all of our portfolios are at or above target, with the exception of a special risk extension. So our basic portfolio, the target is 100 to 120. We are at 143. For extension line of business, we are above the target of 200 at 223. And special risk extension is sitting at 264, just shy of the target being 300.
Mr. Panook.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And going on still on the reserve fund. So how has it changed since the last fiscal year of 2022-2023 last March? I know the investment portfolios have increased, let's say, with markets around the world. I believe there was an opportunity also for MPI to invest globally so that there's a better return on the reserve. Is that correct?
Ms. Chetana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So last year, we updated our asset liability management program or policy, which was reviewed and realigned. We are slightly short on the global side, but we are working towards implementing that ALM strategy.
Mr. Panook.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And continuing with when it comes to the reserve funds, that it's so important that a lot of times there's a good return on these investments, because the fact is it does pay for a lot of the claims in the future. Is there plans to continue to really focus on the reserve fund so that there's never we need making sure that the health of the corporation is in good standings going into the future?
Ms. Chetana.
Absolutely, and hence why there was targets established, ensuring that all 3 lines of business are sustainable and prevents any rate shocks from happening. So thresholds were established for basic from 100 to 120, for extension being 200, and of course the SRE being 300. It is important that MPI maintains those thresholds, and we are in a very good position, basic being higher than the threshold right now.
Mr. Pinook.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And, Mr. Chair, this is another question for the CEO. When it came to the last 7 years, how has the performance of the reserve fund grown, and can the CEO give that information to us, Mr. Chair?
Ms. Chatana.
Yes, we, for many different reasons, we've been in a very good position on the financial health, and that supported, of course, our rebate just a number of years ago during pandemic especially, where we rebated over $500 million, $500 million back to our customers through 3 different rebates. Of course, some of that there was a surplus of funds as we were experiencing lesser volume in claims. Of course, hardly anybody was on the road, so which was a factor in that, along with the company's ability to maintain fiscal prudence. Of course, we're here to serve the customers and answer to customers when they need us. And in the times of COVID, when there was fewer claims, it definitely help build those reserves and, more importantly, provide immediate rebate back to the customers.
Mr. Pinook.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, with the $3.6 billion investment in reserves funds and the $665 million on retained earnings at the end of the last fiscal year, Manitoba Public Insurance is floating that you could begin to reduce rates and to improve the products and services you provide, such as the SRE insurance. Would that be correct, Mr. Chair?
Ms. Chatana.
I would not say that's quite accurate. So each line of business has to be self-sustainable the way MPI is structured. Basic insurance line of business and extension has a close link, as we all are aware that most basic compulsory part of our insurance customers also end up purchasing our products on the extension side. However, the reserves and each line of business is on its own. Any surplus from extension line of business generally flow back to basic customers or basic line of business, benefiting the basic line of business. SRE is independent and on its own. We do not promote subsidy from one line of business to another. So MPI is not in a position to fund SRE from basic or from extension line of business. So therefore, that line of business has to be sustainable on its own. And that's the way the lines of business have been structured.
Mr. Pinook.
So going back to the SRE portion of it, I know when it comes to special risks, it has to be sustainable. What is the future of special risk extension insurance for the future when it comes, Mr. Chair, to making sure that it's profitable enough for MPI to be satisfied, but also could provide the services when it comes to the actual products that SRE provides for, say, truck drivers, to farmers, anybody that can't insure through the basic auto pack that provides. So if we can just see what the future is when it comes to comparison to extension policies throughout the country with other provinces and other jurisdictions, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Chatana.
Yeah, maybe I'll just touch on the two. So although basic is a mandatory and compulsory line of business, customers do have a choice to whether buy products from MPI through our extension line of business. They can also purchase from other providers. And that same goes to special risk extension. It is a competitive line of business, but I understand that we probably serve a majority of Manitoban business, and that's what it's there for, is to promote economics and trucking industry in Manitoba. Having said that, we are understanding that industry is challenged. We're hearing that in times of, especially post-pandemic, there is a market depression that industry is facing. We're hearing that small 1 to 2 truck businesses is coming in with aggressive price cuts to compete with more established businesses. There is a higher risk at times with the new operators who may not have proven history or investment in safety. We're also hearing that in these tough times, higher quality companies may also be looking for ways to reduce their expenses and cutting lower quality owner operator. So there's a bit of a shift and change happening in the industry. We're seeing that, these lower quality operators that often go out on their own, start a business and undercut the price of more established operators, and may sometimes in these cases, safety tends to kind of take the back seat. So we are, in working with our partners, we're trying to understand the industry, where it's going. However, we are here to serve customers. We are here to, as that business is competitive and on its own, for it to remain sustainable. We need to ensure that we also take the right risk and the right business on. In terms of the viability of that line of business, we've recently have implemented some of those changes that needed to be happened. One, we have increased the price in this line of business just recently. And we've also made some product changes. What we're also learning in this line of business are the third-party liability were perhaps superior than any of other jurisdiction that we can look across, and especially peers like ours. We were offering exposures 10, 20 million for long-haul trucking. And what we were learning in jurisdictions outside of Canada, especially when there is large losses and when there's a reward, it's often to the extent of the coverage that the customer has. So we were, facing large losses, which has put this line of business into this concern that we're facing. And in recent times, we have determined the need to change products to align with our peers, and also to look at increment price increases. Up till this year, we were not able to, for many different reasons, we were not able to extend that price increase, which has put us behind the 8 ball. I'm pleased that that support was given to us, both government and, of course, our partners, Manitoba Trucking Association, IBAM, and we have recently implemented that price. Those are the things that needs to happen for this line of business to be sustainable in the long run. MPI is not in a position to ask for all of Manitobans to fund this line of business, nor do we are in a position to be asking for government funding. This line of business must sustain and remain sustainable on its own. So I feel very confident that the measures that we have taken recently will help sustain this line of business. One other thing that we're working on is, in conjunction with Manitoba Trucking Association and IBAM, is we're looking at our eligibility criteria. What are the type of risks, and how do we ensure that we are taking the right risk and we're pricing it appropriately when we take on a business, so there is no rate shock year over year, and we're also maintaining a fiscal prudence, financially, I'll say financial responsibility as we take on new customers.
Mr. Pinook.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have another question for the CEO. When it comes to, special risk extension insurance policies, when it comes to, say, the trucking industry is so valuable for the province of Manitoba. Myself being a former Minister of Transportation Infrastructure, we met with the trucking industry for so many times, making sure there's a balance between safety and making sure that, the flow of goods and services, we are a corridor when it comes to the province of Manitoba, kind of the Keystone province. And the thing is, what we really need to focus on is making sure that we provide the services to these truck drivers, but at the same time, making sure that we don't hold back, let's say, economic development when it comes to the trucking, expansion of the trucking industry, bringing more industry coming into the province of Manitoba. We've had some, back in the day, last 7 years, we had a lot of investment coming to the province. A site like Roquette, a lot of Simplot had an expansion. So we're looking at it now. A lot of farmers now are become bigger. They're transporting more goods and services when it comes to trucking. So the focus is in how does MPI balance, and this is the question for the CEO, balance the making sure that we allow the economy to grow, but at the same time we don't hold back some of the services to, let's say, new truck driving companies, or when it comes to expansion of existing trucking companies. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Jatana?
I couldn't agree with you more. We need to maintain that balance of helping the economy grow while ensuring that MPI's SRE line of business remains available to our customers in Manitoba. And that fine balance is a juggling act on a daily basis by ensuring that by no means we ever want to hold our product or services back. We're here to serve Manitoba. But we want to also, we have the responsibility to ensure that SRE remains viable, remains sustainable for our customers by taking the right risk, by ensuring that we price it appropriately, by ensuring we promote safety and promote health of the industry. So I just, last week I met with the Manitoba Trucking Association, who represents 75% of the trucks in Manitoba. And we very much share that with our partners, that those are the things that Manitoba Public Insurance needs to do. And hence why we're working with the working group along with the IBAM and MTA to update, reestablish our eligibility criteria so we can be here for years to come to serve the needs of Manitoban.
Mr. Pinook?
Oh, thanks, Mr. Chair. And then I'm going to go on to the next, before I pass it over to my colleagues here. One of the questions when it came to, let's say that, when it came to the special risk extension insurance, when it comes to new drivers and when it comes to the industry itself, the trucking industry, the big factor was also when I met with a number of companies that actually provide education and, when it comes to training. Companies in Manitoba. A lot of them are reputable companies that have a very good track record. They felt that they were under the gun when it came to allowing, let's say, new schools like that coming into the market that maybe are not as reputable. How do you balance, Mr. Chair, I was wanting to know if the CEO, how to balance that to make sure that we retain the ongoing, the truck driving school programs that we have existing with our existing companies, but also making sure that the new companies also abide by the standards when it comes to the future of training truck drivers in Manitoba.
Ms. Jatana?
That is, very important part. One is ensuring that we have the right drivers, we have the right training and education feeding this industry, and that really is at the front end. Of course, with the melt, it has helped, but I would say there's still lots of work to be done. We work very closely with government and with these schools, along with MTA, to create that accountability, create that sense of ownership, and there's absolutely some room for improvement, I would say. But we are coming along. Some of the changes that MELT now has been in Manitoba, I want to say 4 or 5 years probably. And while it has increased the number of hours somebody needs to go through training, which is a great program to follow, but you're right, it depends on the instructor ensuring that the schools do what they are required under this program. We have certain programs that we're monitoring and working with these schools, and we look forward to working collaboratively with the MTA and with the schools as well. Some of the pass rates, if you look at in class one, it still is a struggle in Manitoba. It's low 30s. And that is an area of concern that I look forward to working with my team in putting additional measures and working with the industry as to how do we combat this issue. It's not just MPI, it's really, it needs to be various stakeholders coming together to solve this problem, and I look forward to those discussions.
Mr. Prashad?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like Ms. Jantana, I also have a unique name, as many Manitobans do. It's pronounced per shot, as if you go into a place to buy a beverage, it's often so many dollars per shot. So it should help you remember that. I come from a background of private industry. I've been in construction and manufacturing most of my life. I use your SRE policies in previous life. I'm also an avid car collector, so I have a number of policies. I range between 14 and 27 policies a year through MPI, so I'm a very good customer. One of the things that I'm hearing from our constituents is on the SRE side, they have gone out and they've completed their class one. They're typically working for another firm. They've gone out and done all the things they're supposed to, including buying a brand new vehicle and facing payments of approximately $6,000 a month. Several of them have come and approached us and said, I can't get an SRE policy. I'm going on 3 months or 4 months. I'm at a point where I'm going to go bankrupt before I start. Is this in a correlation to the launch of Project Nova? Is this in direct relation to reevaluating the SRE system? And is there any steps coming forward to help these people get to do the business that they're trained to do? Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Prashad. To the whole committee members, if your name is not being pronounced properly, please feel free to correct each other, so that's welcome. And when one of the members is ready for answering a question, just indicate that who is answering so that it's easy for me to recognize. So, Ms. Jatana?
Yeah, a couple of things here. One I can assure you, the example that you're sharing with us has nothing to do with Nova. I recognize Nova Release 1 was implemented for SRE line of business. While there's some struggles with the system, operationalizing the system, the issue of this example has nothing to do with Nova. When we look at a price of SRE, it's dependent on a number of things. Loss experience of any particular company in that year, whether there's been any changes to where the fleet is traveling and how many miles, especially outside of the jurisdiction or in certain jurisdictions that may be more risky. That is a key factor in price. Changes in fleet composition, changes in cargo, and those are the things that factor into price change. So I don't want to necessarily discuss individual cases, but where you would see a price increase from few thousand to 100 and some, those are some of the main factors why the price change is occurring. In some cases, when the initial price was offered, if the information was not available to properly price the product, and there was information that came forward at the renewal, MPI cannot properly price and ensure that the proper coverage is in place, because that puts the customer at risk. And I'm happy to look at individual cases, but it is not the reason why perhaps somebody is facing that significant increase year over year.
Mr. Prashad?
Yeah, in the 4 cases that have been brought to my attention, they're all outside the province. The interprovincial SRE policies don't seem to have any issues getting coverage. It just seems the length of time that these folks have been waiting for an answer is it's detrimental to their business. It's arbitrary. It's difficult for them to operate. They're forced to do jobs that they're not planning on doing and losing potential business. Is there some type of mechanism that is available for them to not wait 3 or 4 months to have direct dialogue? If there's a piece of the puzzle missing, is there something they can do to move forward? Mr. Chair?
Ms. Chatana?
Mr. Prashad, let me say one thing I should have mentioned. So in cases where there is, I'm aware of 1 or 2 customers that are facing a large increase year over year. What we have done in those cases, we've actually extended the policy by so many months so that customer, if our price is not most competitive, that they can also shop around. So we're not just shutting the door on them. The question that you just asked me here is about renewal. So what happened when strike, one of the worst situation MPI could have been in last year with 10 weeks of strike, we came out of the strike with enormous amount of backlog, including in SRE. In SRE, I want to say probably close to 500 policies were backlogged after the strike. And right now, the latest number I got from my team is we're still sitting at 250 policies that have not been renewed. Our staff was on strike, but what we are doing now is offering overtime, addressing that backlog. But what I can tell you, even though somebody's policy has not been renewed, they're still bind, like they're not out of a coverage. I'll say that's what MPI has done above and beyond to ensure that our customers are still looked after while we're struggling to deal with our backlog. It is very unfortunate. That is not a normal way MPI would operate, but there was some circumstances beyond our control. We had no underwriting staff to issue policy for 10 weeks. And it's not just the 10 weeks of backlog. We still have customers that come to us every day. So now, while we're looking after the customers from last summer, we have customers that are falling in the backlog, from November to now. So, I'm proud of my team for their ability to give all they can and working overtime. But we're struggling coming out of the strike and dealing with the backlog. But we have some measures in place to get caught up in this line of business. Last update I got from my team is around springtime, but we're working actively on them.
Mr. Prashad?
I can certainly understand the tremendous stress MPI is under with recovering from the strike and the backlog that's going on. In particular, the cases I'm talking about are new purchases of insurance, and I just feel for somebody as a private business owner for many, many years to start a business and have tremendous payments coming, and you're dealing with MPI, and you need MPI to get your business going, and you have to wait 3 or 4 months. It just seems we're missing something to get these people out gainfully employed. Mr. Chair?
Minister Weeb?
I'm happy to allow the CEO to respond. I simply wanted to say, and I appreciate that the critic is bringing this forward here directly to the CEO. That's I think an important step. If there are any particular cases, and in particular when it comes to businesses and making sure that they have what they need to succeed and to grow in our province, I just invite the member to bring it forward to my office at any time. I'd be happy to work with him and certainly give him any assistance or information through my office that might assist him and might assist his constituents or the contacts that he has. I just wanted to add that context. Anytime he's welcome to come to my office.
Thank you, Minister. Ms. Jatana?
Thank you. I'll just say 2 things. When it comes to accepting new business, there's 2. One is in the province. We are accepting application, although it may not be as quickly as we would have attended otherwise. And the second is applications for long-haul trucking that we hope to open in April with the new eligibility, as I alluded to earlier. That would be opening in April. So that's the time frame. But in the meantime, if there is something, as the minister alluded to, something needs urgent attention, we remain open to looking at that.
Mr. Prashad?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you very much for those comments. My next question has to do a little bit more with the farmers. We have a driver's licensing system for Class 1 that requires training, several hours and several thousands of dollars worth of training for people to go to graduate to get their Class 1 license. Farmers are finding the locations to get the training cumbersome, difficult, costly. Most of the people on the farms have been on the farms for many years. Many of them have Class 3 licenses that have been demonstrating their abilities. Is there any sort of plans in the future moving forward through MPI to address that one sector, to have a prior learning assessment done, or recognizing their level of training done on Class 3 to help them graduate without having going through the Class 1 training program? Mr. Chair?
Ms. Jatana?
Yes, Mr. Prasad, I'd like to learn more about that. Perhaps I may not be close to that concern coming into this role, but if I can understand a little bit more what the concern may be, and I'm sure we can together work on a solution. That obviously we're here to support our farmers, and it's an important industry in our province, so I wouldn't want to just make a quick comment here without fully understanding what the concern or the situation may be.
Mr. Prashad?
Thank you again for a great answer. The question I have around Project Nova, we talked about the difficulties. Is there a foreseeable future where you feel that there's an implement stage that's going to happen for the SRE policy, for the main line of business through MPI? Is there a clear, concise, achievable goal? I know sometimes things get sidetracked and you get waylaid on stuff, but is there a clear goal that you will feel that finally this is behind you? Mr. Chair?
Ms. Jatana?
Absolutely. Stepping into this role, along with creating a longer-term strategy and direction, I would say that's probably one of the top things that keeps me up at night. The reality is MPI needs to change its core technology that cannot be supported, that does not meet the needs of the business or our customers. And there are a number of things that got us to where we are. We do need to rethink, replan, and we do need to deliver Nova. Not changing technology is not the answer for MPI, but what we need to look at is the way we were delivering and I'll say, at one point, we looked at that, do we need to build those capabilities in-house, or because this project has a lifeline and it has a start and end, should MPI be looking for more outside help to develop and implement this versus trying to build those capabilities in Manitoba? Sometimes we are constrained for various different reasons, whether it's the market we're in, there's certain accountabilities on us in terms of controlling our cost and our FTEs and compensation, all of those things that need to be in play. So is there a better way of accomplishing that? Those are the discussions we're having today. There has not been much work in the last 12 months on Nova. We implemented Release 1. It has some operational issues that we're addressing as we speak. We have a dedicated team that is still standing up that technology while we look at future releases. So the plan is to implement the second release, which touches on our International Registration Program customers, IRP. The plan is to launch that next year. However, the large part of Nova, which was the future release, Release 3, which impacts all of us as Manitobans, that needs to be rethinked because we believe that is the largest implementation portion of the overall project, but also where there could be larger exposure if it's not implemented properly. So I'm very pleased to say that we had our new CITO that just started with us about 2.5 months ago after the departure of last CITO, along with the CEO just before that. So the organization is going through a bit of a, I'll say, reset and rethinking of Project Nova. And I want to bring a plan that is just not on a paper, but something that we can stand behind, something we can deliver, and something that we can show value with. And I look forward to coming back in this late spring, early summer, showcasing what is the NOVA plan. And we want to do it with great transparency. I don't think plans like this can be built in the background or can be kept in the background. And we want to do this with Manitoban, with our Public Utilities Board, our regulator, and with our shareholders. So that's the conversations we are going to be having.
Mr. Prichard.
Mr. Chair, once again, thank you very much. We all know that we learn from failures. So as you move forward, great ideas come out of failure. I've got a bunch of questions, but one of the things as private industry that I noticed, in order to get insurance coverage on our larger vehicles, we needed to have our Manitoba Safety Certificate, Fitness Certificate, before we can get the insurance. Before we can get the safety certificate, we have to prove insurance. It seemed very confusing at the time. You can't have one without the other, so you need one to get one. Perhaps we can shed some light. Maybe I was missing something on that. Maybe one of the members of the board can tell me what is the relationship between the Manitoba Safety Certificate as well as receiving insurance?
Ms. Titana.
Mr. Pritchard, just so I understand the question, is your question about SRE or just in general, you and me purchasing a vehicle, so I formulate the right response?
Mr. Pritchard.
It was for the general insurance before you get the SRE policy. On the general insurance, before you can get your policy, you need to have your Manitoba Safety Certificate of Fitness, which is generated, I believe, by MPI. But you also need to, before they can issue that, you needed to have insurance. So if your insurance was due on the same day as you're going to renew your safety certificate, it was a who's going to blink first? Who's going to give me what first? So.
Ms. Titana.
Thank you. If I may just have a moment to.
Ms. Titana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I can speak generally, but maybe I can understand this issue a little bit better. So in general, I'll say, let's say I'm purchasing a new vehicle that requires a safety certificate. I can go get a temporary permit or temporary registration. I believe it varies week to from anywhere from 7 days to 30 days. While I secure safety certificate to properly register a vehicle in Manitoba. But there might be some nuances that I need to just understand a little bit better if we're talking about SRE and Class 1. But generally, for most Manitobans, that's how the safety and insurance would work. Absolutely, we cannot register a vehicle unless it passes safety, though. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Pritchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I might have been a little misleading there. The information that I was asking for wasn't to do with the safety of the vehicle. with the company itself ensuring has a safety fitness certificate issued by the province. And in order to get insurance, you have to prove that the company has that, which I guess is basically decided on the drivers collectively, their accident rates or what have you. In order to get your company safety certificate, you have to show that you have insured vehicles. In order to get your vehicles insured, you have to show that you have the Manitoba safety certificate. Mr. Chair.
Ms. Chitana?
You know, just when you spent 9 years, every parts of the business, there's things that come up I'm still learning. So let me take that under advisement and look into that to make sure that I provide the appropriate response.
Mr. Prashad?
Mr. Chair, I thank the CEO for, again, taking a listen to the questions and looking at that. One more question I have is in relation to the employees of MPI and the policy of return to work or who's still working from home. Can you, just for informational purposes, can the chair have the CEO or anybody from the board just please answer where we're at with that?
Ms. Chitana?
Absolutely. I'm thrilled and pleased to share that our teams actually started coming back to the office as of last week. So basically what we have, with the exception of a small number of employees that would work in contact center, all other employees are classified as hybrid, so meaning that they are working half of the time in the office and the other half of the time they work from home. We recognize that that was probably the best way to post-COVID introduce flexibility and it's also having them in our workplace because there's great benefit for our employees to work with their peers, be together and serve our customers face to face. So that we just started, we communicated that back in December under the direction of the new board. And we started welcoming our staff back just last week.
Mr. Prashad?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Has there been any recordable data available as productivity in comparison to working from home or working in the office? Mr. Chair.
Ms. Chitana?
I can't say there's a hard data that would showcase one way or the other. We know that during COVID, we all learned to work from home. I'm one of those individuals struggled the most to leave the office and work from home, but over time, I got used to, as an executive, being functional right from home. So I feel our team members are the same, with the exception of a certain area like contact center where you can measure productivity right down to the minutes. It's difficult when you are, I'll say, in an office space. It's not counting the widgets necessarily. But what we can say from results overall, and how the organization has done, our staff has been productive at home, but we don't necessarily have hard data. What we do know that flexibility is still something that everybody is wanting, and we believe that we reached a happy medium. Sometimes as a Crown Corporation, although we try to align to other crowns. We are in, Winnipeg and Manitoba, so we're also required to kind of see what other businesses are doing. And I'm glad to hear that most organizations are starting to adopt a hybrid workplace where it allows flexibility, but also allows people to be in the building together.
Mr. Panook?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Since we're on, when it comes to hybrid, when it comes to the policy of getting back to work, my question is now, that gives an opportunity for this, Mr. Chair, for the CEO to find some savings when it comes to when province grows, the staff grows. Is there opportunity that you can keep some savings when it comes to the office space, like the footprint? Is there opportunities of savings when it comes to having certain people come in at a certain time to really utilize the workspace?
Ms. Chitana?
Absolutely. You know, when we, back in 2019, we actually started the city place space plan. And before that, MPI used to occupy roughly 300,000 square feet in City Place. At that time, we had a business case and a plan to reduce our footprint. So today, we occupy half of that space, about 150,000 square feet. And which means that we have seats for roughly 600 to 650 employees in City Place. The total complement of our staff downtown is actually 1,400. So we've done exactly that. So we were not actually able to adopt, some organizations are doing 3 in and 2 out. So we had to very strategically design this hybrid so that we can maximize the space and not have to invest any more space for us to bring all of our team members back. So we're trying to kind of balance that. And through that space plan, we do have a reduction in operating costs just by giving up 150,000 square feet that we were able to rent out to other tenants. So another success story of MPI, that our tower is fully occupied right now. So it's now we're sitting on a vacant space. That space is being utilized from someone else, and we're generating revenue off of that.
Mr. Panu?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I've got another question for the CEO. When it comes to Project Nova, I know it's very important to invest in technology as you go along here. So when was the first launch of the old system? Was it going back to 1995, Mr. Chair? A question I have for the CEO. Has there been any improvements in when it comes to the systems over that period of time?
Ms. Chitana?
To the best of my understanding, I believe the system that we are updating goes back several decades. That's my understanding, yeah. But I can confirm that.
Mr. Panook?
So, Mr. Chair, I guess when I was a very brand new broker at the time in 1995 when we implemented the first system, when it all went from paperwork to be sent in, to be updated, to actually online. And it was kind of a rigmarole because it was, I guess everybody was put on the system at the same time. And the system crashed. So there was an investment that was put in, and eventually it was a summer of hell. But I would say it was, once it got going, it was a great system because everything was live. So you're sort of saying that there was probably no investment in that 20-some period, these 2 decades then, until it was just done recently for Project Nova. So nothing was done in the last 20 years before that.
Ms. Chitana?
I wouldn't say nothing was done. As take for your phone, there's always work, there's always updates, there's always some sort of a system investment required, but we're still operating on the same system. And just like my iPhone, in a couple of years, this is going to be outdated. It's no different for a large technology that we're talking about. Of course, MPI continues to invest on all technology, but comes a point that you need to replace that technology. And that's the point we're at with these technologies we're talking about.
Mr. Panook?
Sure. So, Mr. Chair, so the question would be, if for 20/20 hindsight, would there be, let's say, if you went back in the past, would there have been an opportunity to say, look, we should have invested as we went along, and instead of relying on the old system, we should have upgraded it so that it hadn't all had to be done at one time? Would you agree with that, Mr. Chair, for the CEO?
Ms. Chitana?
I would agree with that comment that, we, with any, and that's one of the, as part of our multi-year strategy, we are looking at all of our technology, creating a technology road map to understand the debt that we will be facing so that we're not hit with a one big bill at the end, that we continue to invest in our technology. And technology is an enabler in any business, including ours. I can't speak to kind of my predecessors and whether those discussions were happening, whether those conversations occurred. But I truly believe that, for us to keep up with the needs of the customers, our technology also need to keep up with our needs. So I absolutely agree with that.
Mr. Panook.
Chair, I got another question. When it came to the backlog, I just wanted to make sure that if we have a date of when the backlog is going to be actually fulfilled, actually back to a normalcy when it comes to just focusing on renewals and focusing on new policies being issued for new clients. I was wondering if there's a timeline when that backlog is going to be eliminated, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Chitana.
Thank you, Mr. Panook, for that question. Let me kind of share with you where we're at, where we're at, and maybe that'll give you a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. So for the 10-week that we were in strike, if you look at our main buckets of work, adjusting, estimating, total loss, vehicles that are not drivable that need to be replaced. One, we looked at kind of what did we actually accomplish during the strike. You know, we worked with our partners and our stakeholders. We deployed 85% of our staff was on strike. So we had a very few staff members that were left behind. And during the strike, you know, we really were not able to serve the needs of Manitoban during that time. For adjusting, we were only able to serve 3% of our customers, 3% of the claims that came in. We, you know, working very closely with our repair shop partners, and they absolutely stepped up, and I couldn't imagine where we would have been without them. You know, we were able to serve about 29% of the customers. However, the estimates that we were doing necessarily, we have to redo some of them because we didn't have our estimators at the time that we were doing like hail estimators. So we invested in a technology that was doing a quick estimate, but that technology is only good if you have experienced estimator there, validating that we got all the information in that 7-minute scan. Total loss, you know, we had 545 claims that came through during the strike, and we were only able to serve 10% of those customers. So what that meant, that gave us roughly over 32,000 type of appointments that were just waiting for us to serve customers. Now, this is where I get to be proud of the team that I'm representing here today. At the end of February, we have completed 50% of those, the backlog in adjusting. We've completed 66% of the estimates that occurred during that strike. And we have completed 87% of total loss claims that came during that strike. So we are making significant progress. What my team tells me, and this is a live topic at the executive table every 2 weeks as to what is the backlog, what other measures, additional support and resources we need to put in place to clear this backlog. And I feel, you know, I'm speaking for my team, but I feel that we can accomplish this by spring. That would be our goal.
Mr. Panook.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I've got a question again for the CEO. When it comes to when backlogs like that and times a year or two, I know manufacturers to when it comes to investment firms. I worked at Investors Group over the many years ago. We used to always get like temporary services of employees that come in to do some of the backlog, let's say doing some of the more of the clerical work that allows people to, like say employees, long-term employees, to focus on, you know, more of the, when it comes to actually issuing the policies, which will be more advanced. You need to know be knowledge of the insurance industry. But is that also an opportunity when it comes to MPI to look at, you know, at certain times of the year when you need to get more staffing in? Is that a consideration when it comes to for the future of MPI?
Ms. Chitana.
You know, we absolutely, there's a number of things we've exhausted during strike. We did have replacement workers that we brought in, but what we found, I'm not saying our business is so unique, but our business, not to point out our peers, we're not selling bottles of liquor that anybody can come and sell. We're dealing with complex insurance claim issues that needs trained staff members to serve those customers. So we're, and quite honestly, whether you look at our estimators or our adjusters or even service reps that provide front counter services, are highly trained people. It's not something we can just take somebody off the street and put them in the position and they will hit the ground running. Adjuster requires minimum of 30 days of training. Our driver examiners go through, I believe, minimum of 6 weeks of training before they're able to be put in a vehicle. So it requires a time to train. But believe me, as soon as we came out of the strike, we started that work. We've hired additional adjusters. We've hired many frontline staff members to help us combat this issue. So that's kind of what I monitor also on a weekly basis, is how are we recruiting new team members that we need, and how are we training them, and what can we improve in the process that can also clear the backlog. Additional, including use of technology, so we've implemented things like first notice loss, where customers can kind of report, give us basic information, so you're not waiting on a call in a contact center. So we're looking at absolutely those measures, including some of the things that you talked about as to how do we deal this. We don't want to be in this situation, and we're not our best when we have a backlog and our customers are not being served. And I come from a service industry. I've spent my 30 years being in a service industry, and I fundamentally believe that we're here to serve Manitobans, and we need to do whatever it takes to provide those services.
Mr. Pinook.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the CEO for the information there. That's great. The other thing is, it's basically when it comes to adjusters, I guess there's also independent adjusters too that can be also tapped into. Have you ever considered, Mr. Chair, the actually looking at that service in the future if there was every backlog, especially when it comes to claims?
Privatization.
Ms. Jatana?
No, just
We are recruiting adjusters. Of course, today, those are MPI employees, and I would love to know where there is folks that we can bring on and hire. One thing to note here, Manitoba probably has one of the lowest unemployment rate. I just saw numbers yesterday, 4%. That is a challenging, like we are coming out of a COVID and many other issues that we're facing. Like we are finding difficulties attracting, retaining folks, where it's become a bit of a revolving door in some of the positions that we are hiring, and we're constantly adjusting is one of those areas that it's a challenging area to be in for a long period of time. So often we find our folks that also want to get out of that role and get into something else. But those are real issues, and what's not lost on me is that we need to build our adjusting. I truly believe that is one of the moments that matters to customers. Most customers, we will sell a policy and we never see them, and that's great. That's what we should be in the background. But when a customer has an accident, when they have a claim, that truly is probably the most significant thing that they're going through, and we want to make sure we put the right, highly skilled, trained people in front of them to serve them.
Mr. Pinook.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to go more towards like some of the constituency issues when it came to, I represent Southwest region of Manitoba, where the challenges are, I guess, again, we're seeing a lot of baby boomers retiring. There's a lot of so the services gets reflected on the lack of staff, I guess, when it comes to, when we were just talking about adjusters. One of the biggest concerns that I have right now is that there was a lot of claim centers, not claim centers, because claim centers are in regional places like Brandon, but it's those days where the adjuster goes out to certain communities. And we're seeing that more and more of, Mr. Chair, more and more of those communities are being taken off the list now. And now individuals have to go that much further to get their vehicle adjusted. And that's a really big concern, especially comes from rural Manitoba, when, a lot of them are farmers who are very busy. They're challenging of, getting other services in the community. They have to go further away to get their services like equipment. But then also they have a claim. They have to go now to a larger center. So my question would be, is that something that the focus is on, is centralization of the claims, or is there going to be opportunities that once you look at the train more adjusters so that they can actually go out to the rural areas where they used to have adjusting been done? So that's my question, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Chitana?
Yeah, Mr. Panook, I would love to learn a little bit more about perhaps, is there a community that we've overlooked? But what I can tell you, we're here to serve all parts of Manitoba. We serve the province, not just one particular area. And far as last time I looked into this matter, which maybe is a few months behind, but we were going to different communities, to go where the community is and not kind of bring necessarily them to our major locations. So if there is something that is perhaps overlooked or underserved, we'd be happy to look at that. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague about some, when it comes to the licensing and.
Ms. Byram?
Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to ask a question here today. So we're hearing in rural Manitoba and other jurisdictions as well, that there's a lack of driving training programs in high schools in some communities, and this is due to the lack of the instructors. And we're also hearing that some communities lack access to the driver testing and examinations. And some have to travel long distances to get access to those. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're going to address those concerns going forward and address the lack of driving instructors?
Ms. Chitana?
My apologies. I think there's two questions. One is about Driver's Ed, which is training we offer through high school schools, and we hire instructors. And before COVID, we used to have nearly 10,000 students that went through that program. I've seen some recent numbers. I recognize that number has declined, and maybe it's just between $8,000 and $9,000. And I also recognize that what I understand from my team, there has been, this is kind of where baby boomer conversation comes into play. We've had some retirements in some communities that we have not able to replace those instructors. So there is a plan in place to look at those. I believe there's a number of communities, and I was just speaking to our leader yesterday on that plan as to what's the plan for us to get those instructors and bring our numbers back to what we had. So there is a active plan that's being worked on when it comes to that. Your second question is in general testing. About 18 months ago, we had 12 to 16 week wait when it came to driver testing. And we put a lot of emphasis on addressing that issue by hiring additional driver examiners, looking at the process, looking at how and when we serve, including going to the communities that we were going to provide tests. What I can tell you today, I believe it's about 4 weeks that you can book your appointment. I'm also, I was given information, and that's something I look at it on a biweekly basis, that you can almost get a same day appointment in most of our centers across the province. So that's one area I would say. I didn't highlight that in terms of the backlog. That is kind of a shining star for us, that we have made significant improvement. That is not to say that we can't do more. And what we do want to maintain that booking time to 4 to 6 weeks, that customers should be able to book that appointment out, and where possible that we have some availability on an ongoing basis.
Ms. Byram? Mr. Panook?
Mr. Chair, I was wondering if you can have a 10-minute recess just for everybody to have a break and continue after 10 minutes.
Is it will of the committee to have a break for 10 minutes?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Trustees recess for 10 minutes.
We would meet after the recess, 10 minutes. Thank you. Will the Standing Committee on Crown Corporations please come back to order? The floor is now open to questions. Mr. Prashad.
Mr. Chair, I'm the MLA representing Selkirk. And in the area of Selkirk, we have a number of constituents who have complained to me for driver's licensing and testing that they have to drive out to places such as Arborg or Beausejour. Although places like that are wonderful in our province, they just don't feel it's necessary to drive that far. They should be adequate spaces available. And when they find out that people from outside the area are fulfilling those spaces, they question me as to why would we be doing that, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Jatana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think I understand the question. What happens, a lot of times Selkirk is sometimes considered a bedroom community of Winnipeg, and customers can travel into Selkirk to book appointments. I'm going by my memory, but I believe this has been talked about whether we should create a bit of a ring around Winnipeg. And there may have been kind of back and forth on that, but maybe something I can take back, whether Selkirk is an opportunity to look at a little closer. That's probably the nearest community that I could see kind of facing that type of challenges, but something I can take back for sure.
Mr. Prashad.
Mr. Chair, when it comes to MPI and insuring of vehicles, there's a maximum value allocation on your basic insurance. That value, with the cost of vehicles rising and trucks being $80,000 to $130,000 for a nice truck to drive, that value doesn't really represent the average cost of vehicle. What is MPI doing to make sure that the maximum insured value represents the current cost of vehicles?
Ms. Jatana.
Mr. Prashad, you're absolutely right. Maximum insured value is $70,000, and it was updated back in, I believe, 2019 was the last time, and it was increased from 50 to 70. But we have seen the increase cost in vehicle repair, including new vehicles. So that is something that perhaps MPI could revisit, whether it's time for us to rethink and relook at that amount, and whether it's time for another adjustment. That's something we can take back.
Mr. Prashad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When it comes to the additional cost, is there a separate add-on policy that could be purchased to make that gap coverage?
Ms. Jatana.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, maybe I need to take that back. I do not believe offhand that there is an extension product, but it's something I can take back.
Mr. Prashad.
Mr. Chair, as I stated earlier, I have a number of vehicles and I'm quite involved with the classic car industry. In that classic industry, vehicles are quite old. They can range from 1920s to, I think it's up to 25 years from current date. Now, collectively, if you would look at those vehicles, the value of those vehicles will range from beaters worth nothing to a collector car could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Right now, the only system to establish a value is where the collector car owner goes out and gets an appraisal done prior to insuring the vehicle. Is there a method that you could insure your vehicle within a bracket of, an example, up to 20,000, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, and so on, that we can establish a value for those collector car owners who cherish their vehicles, that this is the starting point that they're insuring that they would expect, not to say that your appraisal has expired and that way you only get a couple of $100 for your vehicle.
Can the member table his list of cool cars for the committee?
Ms. Jatana.
Thanks for that question, Mr. Prashad. And actually, I'm very attuned to kind of the concern you're raising. I worked very closely with the Collector Car Association. I've attended a number of their events as well. And actually, we're working with that group, I'll say, for lack of a better word. Right now, there's a survey that's out collecting the feedback as to what the needs and wants of that customer is. And we recognize that we need to look at that product and how we serve those customers. I believe it's a small number of customers in that group, but very important for us. So that is something that we will be looking at. And if this is one of the opportunity to improve and enhance product, that's kind of what we're looking at.
Mr. Prashad?
Mr. Chair, I believe currently the appraisals are not even considered by MPI in the event of a total loss if they're over 3 years old. Based on the fact that collector cars only drive their vehicles on warm, sunny days and typically once a week, they are definitely a cherished commodity that they have. Could there be some attention given to increase that date further down the road? These are typically the only vehicles that actually appreciate in value and do not depreciate. Mr. Chair.
Ms. Chetana?
Like I said, I think the best way to look at this product and serving the customer is really through a complete consultation that's happening through that survey. And if there's opportunity to enhance that product, obviously it will get prioritized. We will take a look at it. But something I can take back. I don't think I can kind of in the moment say that what's the right value, what's the product enhancement. The commitment I can make is that we look at this product and whether it needs to be enhanced.
Mr. Prashad?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Throughout the strike process, MPI had the direct repair facilities where the people were taking their vehicles right to the repair outfits to be estimated, and the paperwork was done relatively easy for the consumer. Is there plans to continue with that direct repair facility moving forward?
Ms. Chetana?
Yeah, direct to repair has been part of MPI's ecosystem probably now 5-6 years, and there's no plan to change that. What happened during strike, we actually leveraged our partnership and just asked them to whether they can take more customers on in estimate, and they were able to take a little bit more on. But we also heard from that industry at that time that sometimes estimating kind of takes away from them repairing the vehicle. So there is a balance, right? So the service that they provide for our mutual customers is the estimating part. Repairs have always obviously happened there. So there's no changes to that program. That program remained as is and will continue to serve as part of our ecosystem.
Mr. Prashad?
Mr. Chair, as somebody goes through the repair process, is there any type of system to follow up with the consumer to make sure they are satisfied with the facility and make sure the work was done according to their expectations?
Ms. Chetana?
Absolutely. As part of the PDR program, once you go the direct to repair, that PDR, the customer is actually called to provide that feedback. And unfortunately, I have been a customer a couple of times of MPI, so I personally remember. And actually, they're quite diligent that they will call you multiple times to get your feedback. So there's no way escaping from that feedback. And then what we do with that feedback, we report that back to our shops as how they are doing and performing the services on behalf of MPI. So that mechanism exists today.
Mr. Prashad?
Mr. Chair, thank you very much for that. Based on the information that you gather through these surveys, is there anything relatable to the consumers where they can take a look? If I've had a collision and I can go online and say, company A has a 98% approval rating and company G has a 12%, I think I would know not to go to G, I'd go to A. Is there anything available to the consumer that says what these surveys show?
Ms. Chitana.
Going by my memory, but I believe we used to showcase net promoter score of shops, so customers actually can see how those shops are performing. I hope that is still part of our recent evolution, but that is one way we showcase that performance of shops. And we also follow up with shops if they are not performing at X. It is a eligibility, you know, they have to enter into that program. They have to maintain certain success factor for them to remain. And if there is any performance issue, we have a dedicated team that deals with the relationship and the shop management.
Mr. Prashad.
I'd like to thank the CEO. She answered my next question, so thank you very much for that. It's a very important tool to have to let know that the shops are being carefully scrutinized and to make sure that they are following what we need for the consumers. I do have another question on the licensing requirements for RVs and motorhomes, recreational vehicles. What is the current classification required for somebody to operate a Class A motorhome?
Ms. Chitana.
You're testing my memory, Mr. Prashad, but let me confirm because it's been not too long that I got this.
Ms. Chitana.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Prashad, to best of my knowledge, I believe it's Class 4, but I can confirm.
Mr. Prashad.
Mr. Chair, I thought Class 4 had to do with taxi cabs and safety vehicles. I thought Class 3 was a little bit larger.
Sorry, Ms. Chitana.
That's why you bring your experts with you. I've been corrected that it's Class 5, and so is for vehicle for hire is also Class 5.
Mr. Prashad.
Is there any mechanism, the concern that I have is that somebody as a city driver who's driven a small compact car on a Class 5 license as a commuter, all of a sudden goes out one day and buys a 14,000-pound RV and goes thundering down the road without having the training that most people would have in a Class 3 license requirement. Is there any plans to look at the licensing requirements?
Ms. Chitana.
It hasn't registered my attention. That does not mean it's not an issue. I know that we work very closely with the government. We are the administrator of DVA, but we work with government closely where there's needs to change or change needs to happen. So I absolutely can understand the issue if that has been an issue, but I would be taking this under advisement.
Mr. Prashad.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if it has been an issue. I just know that the people who are trained under a Class 3 license have a much broader fundamental understanding of a large vehicle of that type of weight. It may be a non-starter here, and may be very simply that people buy an RV and they learn to drive it. I do have another question in regards to the motorcycle requirement. The motorcycle requirement, which is a system that was put through MPI to make sure that people looking for their motorcycle license has gone through that program. It's a wonderful program. What is the feedback that you have received from people who've achieved their motorcycle license and or the instructors?
Ms. Chitana.
MPI partners with the Safety Services Manitoba for that training and I guess feedback. I know that I've had conversations with Safety Services Manitoba. I'm not aware of any necessarily concern. I believe the program serves well that community. And it's, it's something that we work very closely them to ensure that it remains. It's actually funded, part of it is funded by MPI. But that's something maybe I can learn in my new role, whether there's opportunity to improve and do better. But that's, like I said, it's been functioning well for Manitoba Public Insurance.
Mr. Prashad.
Mr. Chair, I do want to say that the motorcycle program is very well run. It's a fun program to be at, and this is one of the highlights MPI can take back and say, yeah, they're serving their community very well. At this time, I'd like to pass it back to Mr. Panook.
Mr. Panook.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I just, question for the CEO, when you go back to the financial statements of the balance sheet, item and the liability, the last item of the liability section, provisions of unpaid claims. So there's notes of 17 and 18. There's like a,
Can you
it's
specify
on
the
page
please?
28, the balance sheet.
Mr. Panook.
And yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. And the question I have is the amount is $2.364 billion. I just wanted to know if it can, if the CEO can explain why it's such a high amount, and when it comes to, I believe it's for future claims estimates. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Chitana.
Vision friendly.
If I may just have a few minutes to speak to my team here.
Ms. Chitana.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So yes, speaking with my CFO, a couple of things. One, it's the number is comparable year over year, and that is our best guess as to claims that have incurred but not paid. So it's a large number, but obviously the claims as they go through, not everything is paid in the moment. Sometimes, customers, and it's both from physical damage and the PIP, which is the future benefits. That's that number that combines.
Mr. Panook.
So with future claims, let's say, for instance, sometimes we have situations where we have extraordinary claims event. For instance, let's say, for example, Calgary had one of the worst hailstorms in Canadian history. It was actually, I think, behind the ice storm in Montreal and Quebec. So is MPI prepared for, let's say Winnipeg ever received a claim like that too, when it comes to a major hail claim? We had a few hail claims, but it was only sectional parts of the city. But what happens if it was the whole city in general? Is MPI prepared in that amount for a possible a major claim like that?
Ms. Chitana.
Yes, MPI is prepared, although we don't want those type of claims. Unfortunately, it did happen like last August. So we had few hailstorms, and then we had one major one actually a couple of days before we went into strike. And last year, as I said in my opening remark, that it was the largest hail claim in our history of MPI. So in those events, we have something called reinsurance. And actually, MPI is one of your unique companies that was able to secure reinsurance at an aggregated level. So we are able to lump those together and pursue our reinsurance options. And in this case, I believe the total hail claim, my understanding is well over 100 million last year. And we will recover roughly, I believe so far, 60 million of that. So MPI is I'll say, prepared to deal with that. There is a cost of reinsurance, so we cannot recover the first 50, so we lose 50 million, and the rest is recovered through the reinsurance options.
Mr. Panook.
Mr. Chair, and I guess one other question I have now that you talk about reassurers, we're finding that there's less and less of them out there right now. Is that a challenge that MPI has when it comes to reassurance of let's say, of risk when it comes to the major risk? Are you having challenges with reassured companies into the supply and demand out there?
Ms. Chitana.
Absolutely. We're actually in negotiations with our reinsurers as we speak, and we have faced the market is hardening. And my understanding, my limited understanding in that area would be that some of the large losses overall has impacted demand and availability of products, in which we're facing some of that. We have seen price increases in reinsurance, and we further anticipate that there would be a hefty price increase coming through securing that reinsurance for next year's. But we're still able to, reinsure, and our aggregated kind of reinsurance is one of something that not all insurance companies are able to even take or get. And the reason why we're able to, of my understanding, is that because we serve only one province, so we don't have the risk necessarily. When I talk about basic insurance or that product, we don't have the exposure like other insurance companies would necessarily face, where they would serve multiple jurisdiction, facing kind of a different type of risk. So we're somewhat, I'll say, sheltered and protected. Nevertheless, the hardening of the overall market has impact on MPI as well, and that comes through often pricing. It's not the product may not be able to be secured, it's the price that we pay for the product.
Mr. Panook.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Another question for the CEO. When it comes to comparison to other jurisdictions, I know we always compare MPI's rates to Toronto and Calgary, which are, again, they're larger centers. There's probably more accidents and stuff. But at the same time, younger drivers there too. But when it comes to Manitoba, how do we compare, let's say, with something more comparable like Saskatchewan? The same type of population, the same demographics. How do we compare with other jurisdictions, like which other jurisdictions that have public insurance, like BC, ICBC, when it comes to SGI, and other jurisdictions like that? Mr. Chair.
Ms. Chitana.
We pride in MPI in saying that, we remain amongst the lowest. We're not always going to be the lowest, but we're going to be amongst the lowest. And when we look at we do showcase this actually during PUB, and I know it's somewhere in the annual report too, that showcases all of the jurisdiction and where MPI lands. And often MPI is either ahead of SGI or just behind. So that's probably the most comparable jurisdiction that we can look at, because similar landscape, similar coverage, public versus public. So that's probably the most reasonable way of looking at our comparability. And we remain amongst the lowest, or sometimes, like I said, slightly ahead or slightly behind them.
Mr. Panook.
Okay, I got a question when it comes to the PUB, when it comes to establishing rates and I guess, we have to take all these, since we've been talking here today, we talked about the major claim that happened in Winnipeg with the hailstorm, but also at the same time, we have a great healthy reserve now that can be diversified into investments to take advantage of diversification globally. So when it comes to PUB setting rates for the future for Manitoba drivers out there, how does it look going forward on this? And also the challenges that we have with reassurers now too, that there's always going to be that extra cost when it comes to a lot of claims are happening around the world. It does affect when it comes to MPI and how the rates are established. Can the CEO give me any indications where the rates could be seen going forward in the future?
Ms. Chitana.
A couple of things. One is reserves being at target or above the target necessarily does not translate into rate reduction. So when we apply for a rate, it's based on what our forecast is on claims, expenses, what we anticipate investment, return on investment, and that formulates what's the rate going to be in the future. Whenever there is a surplus in our reserves, as per legislation, as per our policy, that surplus, if we are in the case of over the threshold, that is required to be returned in form of a rebate. So it's two separate, so today, actually our reserves are well over the threshold, and we very much could be in a position of offering or providing a rebate in the future once our annual report has been audited, and then we would be making that decision. On the other hand, I'm not saying this is the case, I'm using as an example, but if we forecast a large, we've seen a larger severity in claims, I think it's 10 to 12%, that could impact what the forecast of the claim cost. Claim cost is one of your larger factor into the rate setting. If we see an increase in severity, increase in claim cost, we could very much be in a position for asking for a rate increase while we're offering, providing rebate at the same time. So not saying that that's the case going into next year, but that very much could be, and often if I had my actuary here, you know, she would give you a lot more detail, but I try to understand as an average individual. So what I need to know as Manitoban, that I could get a rebate check, and plus I could see an increase in my, my rate for future years. To answer your question as to what the forecast looks like, I am expecting those numbers, initial, I'll say indication, by middle of next month. And we would be obviously showcasing and sharing that as part of the GRA in June to a larger population, large public, as to what that rate ask and what is that forecasted rate will look like.
Mr. Pnuck.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the information that you provided. It's very valuable for Manitobans to hear that, you know, we are, you know, MPI is looking at possible rebates, or when it comes to the award, when it comes to the how the reserve is invested. That was just changed not long ago. The other thing is, I have, being that I was the transportation minister too, is it important to MPI to making sure that government continues to invest in highways to improve infrastructure, especially removing when it comes to, you know, doing interchanges like St. Mary's, doing possibly McGillivray around the perimeter highway, because in Winnipeg is going to grow over 1 million people in the next number of decade or so. Is it important that we continue investing in infrastructure to eliminate the claims in the future for what MPI has to pay out?
Ms. Chitana.
Mr. Pnuck, I would say it's outside of my expertise as a CEO of MPI. What I can say that road safety is part of our mandate, and I often, when I talk about road safety to our team, I often say it's a three-legged stool. There's a responsibility on MPI to ensure that we increase education and awareness around risky behavior, promoting safe driving in Manitoba, working with partners to increase road safety. Then there is government, and that is responsible for infrastructure. And then the third leg is the enforcement, and often we work with enforcement to create awareness or accountability on certain things. So I can speak as to what MPI's responsibilities are. Now, as an insurer in Manitoba, I understand that road infrastructure has an impact on safety. In winters like this, where we could anticipate few more potholes, has a direct impact on our claims and insurance, of course. But I will leave that to perhaps government to decide as to what the investment should be. But we, as Manitobans, we would all benefit from having, I'll say, the right infrastructure.
Mr. Pnuck.
One of the things one of the things I experienced just being on the highway, especially on the divided highway like the Trans-Canada Highway, I know that when I was minister, there was a situation where I don't think a lot of our public drivers out there are understanding what the passing lane is on a Trans-Canada highway. It's creating an unsafe situation where people, like, it's not in the actual, what we found out wasn't in the handbooks of educating our youth or our new Canadians here, that a passing lane, especially it's not like the city where you can drive any lane you want, but on the Trans-Canada highway, there is a law actually, and it can be fined for passing on the line. So I'm hoping that now that MPI actually puts that in their education brochures when it comes to training new drivers. One place I found was when I was driving down one of the jurisdictions in the States, they actually marked it on the signage saying that this is law, basically in big print, like on print, saying that any drivers using the passing lane could get fined. And this is law, and it's actually in Oklahoma. Is that what they did? And I thought that was a brilliant way of making sure to educate our young drivers, because we're seeing more and more that it's unsafe. I see truck drivers almost hitting people on the Trans-Canada Highway. I live on the Trans-Canada Highway. I drive 3 hours just to drive into Winnipeg on the Trans-Canada Highway, and I've seen close calls. And I think MPI, it's up to MPI, I believe, to really focus on education too when it comes to drivers. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Chitana?
No, thank you for that feedback, Mr. Panuka. I think that absolutely seems like a very reasonable, proactive approach another jurisdiction has taken. I know that we've updated our driver's ed education, and I know some of that knowledge was in there, but I recognize not everyone goes through a driver's ed. Perhaps there's opportunities for us to further improve our road safety and driver education in the future.
Mr. Prashad?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We talked about the PUB and the forecast. Earlier, I talked about the increase of value of new vehicles. But second to that is used vehicles. The value of used vehicles have gone up tremendously. Has that been put into the forecast rates moving forward?
Ms. Chitana?
Yeah, we are seeing the change in prices of used and new vehicles. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why we also struggle in finalizing the total loss claim, because customers, what the vehicle is worth to what they may be able to replace, they're having challenges. So therefore, the insurer is also facing that. That is part of the severity. When I was talking about 10 to 12% severity that we're facing, those numbers are part of, it's considered in the forecasting.
Mr. Prashad?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In a separate topic altogether, in reading the report, it looks like that the future service available for people renewing their auto pack would be to simply just go online down the road. Is that something that we could foresee in the near future, or does that exist already?
Ms. Chitana?
I would say I get that we all look for convenience, and we like online options, and insurance is no different. I don't believe that's the only way to serve customers when it comes to insurance. And actually what we found, and sometimes we learn by our peers, ICBC, who's a little bit ahead of us in terms of offering online options. And my understanding and they've been now in an online for last couple of years at least. And what we found, they have about 10 to 15% take up that customers choose to transact online versus going to a broker. And sometimes it's the comfort level of the customer or the relationship that they formed with the broker. I believe that we need to offer choices in Manitoba and leave it to the customer as to what the best solution may be for them. I know myself, I still go into broker's office to provide my quarterly payment or renew my license or renew those services, even though I have access to service centers. And partially, I have a relationship with the broker that I deal with. So I think it's a little bit of mix of both. So I think we need to give the same options to our customers in Manitoba.
Mr. Prashad.
Mr. Chair, has any, in those options that are available, has any consideration been taken to the brokers and how this impacts their financial statements if the customer chooses to go directly to MPI as opposed to going into their establishment?
Ms. Chitana.
We have an agreement in place with the IBAM for the brokers, and we meet with the IBAM on a monthly basis to understand as to how do we continue to work with that industry, how do we continue to ensure that option is available, and part of those conversations take on, on a regular basis, we're having those conversations. We want to manage the balance between fiscal prudence and having those options for our customers. And I believe there's a good balance with the agreement that we have in place right now.
Mr. Panook.
A few more questions here. When it comes to personal injury protection plan, I know that was implemented when I was still a broker. And when it comes to, let's say, for instance, a family member, let's say a child, like a teenager, was visiting an aunt and uncle, let's say in the States, and they were in a car. Does this personal protection also cover for them if they don't have number one, they don't have a license, driver's license, but number two, they're not in a Manitoba vehicle? Mr. Chair.
Ms. Chitana.
So all of us, our Manitobans, are covered by PIP, regardless whether we have a driver's license or not, whether we're driver or passenger. The extent to the coverage is, of course, if your injury is sustained being in a vehicle or with the vehicle, that coverage extends to all Manitobans.
Mr. Panook.
So in this case, it wasn't a Manitoba car, but it was a Manitoban who was in a car accident in the United States that didn't have a driver's license. Because usually sometimes your driver's license sometimes covers you for an uninsured car. I remember that. Yeah.
Ms. Chitana.
Just so I understand, so they were in a vehicle that was not a Manitoban vehicle, but the individual happened to be Manitoban.
Yeah, but they were visiting.
Mr. Panook. Mr. Panook.
Chair, they were visiting with Mr. Chair. They were visiting with an aunt and uncle. Let's say, for instance, using an example, and they were in that car of their aunt and uncle's, which is literally insured in Iowa. Does that child have coverage?
Ms. Chitana.
My understanding is that all Manitobans have that coverage in North America, but I could confirm to make sure.
Mr. Panook.
I got a question. So here's an example. Is this part of is it because of the personal protection industry? I got a constituent who rented a car here in Manitoba and went down to the States, and then went to, let's say, to Texas. Their coverage was $2 a day. Meanwhile, if they flew to Texas and rented a car in Texas, their coverage is $5 a day on your vacation driver's policy. What is that because the vehicle that you rent here is under that PIP program, or what is there a different cost when it comes to where you pick up the vehicle? Is my question. If it's in the States or in Canada.
Ms. Chitana.
So you're talking about two products. There's the first product, me taking my vehicle to US is.
Mr. Panook.
Sorry,
Mr.
Mr.
Panook.
Chair.
Yeah.
It's a rental car in both. Picking up a rental car here and driving down to the States versus taking going to the States by airplane and picking up a rental car there. It's $5 a day versus $2 from here, and driving with the Manitoba car, plated vehicle from a rental company, and going down south.
Ms. Chitana.
It is our extension product that we offer in both cases, and you're absolutely right. It has a different rate based on exposure. But what I can say, let me brag about our products. I know, you don't get this type of a publicity, so I will say that our rental vehicle coverage is probably the lowest compared to anyone. So even $2 and $5, I can tell you, is an excellent product that MPI has.
Mr. Pinook.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. On that note, we have no other questions, and thank you very much for your answers to all our questions. And we just want to learn more about MPI. As a critic, I'm just a new critic for MPI since we became opposition. So I'm really value the time that you've spent with us, and value the minister for getting us these questions and the opportunity to learn more about MPI. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Does the CEO want to respond to the comment?
Thank you.
Ms. Jatana, sorry.
No problem. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. In some ways, it's really too easy. It's easy to answer questions when you're sharing information. I'm not making up stuff, so it makes it easier for me to do my job. I am honestly honored. I want to just do what's right for our people and Manitoban. While I don't have all the answers, but I am committed to learning. I am committing to doing what this organization should. I've benefited from Manitoba Public Insurance for 30 years, and this is home. So I want the public insurance to be here for a long time to come, even beyond when I retire. And I'm going to do everything with my team to ensure that we deliver on a value. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for a wonderful discussion and your participation. Seeing no further questions, I will now put the question on the report. Shall the annual report of the Manitoba Public Insurance Corporation for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023 pass?
Pass.
The report is accordingly passed. The hour being 11:24. What is the will of the committee?
Committee rise.
Committee rise.